Here are three common myths around work boundaries. I'm Nicole Song, America's work-life balance coach and best-selling author. And this topic is one that is so relevant. I know so many people who are setting intentions for 2023 when I'm recording this around having clearer boundaries and really having them. And when you are starting to set boundaries, it's so important to understand the myths or ideas or beliefs that you actually have around boundaries that are stopping you from setting them in the first place. So today, I'm going to break down what those myths are, talk a little bit more about the things that do get in the way when we're actually looking and feeling like it's time, we're ready to start setting some boundaries. And then stay till the end, and I will give you a little tip for how do you start to identify how do you actually set boundaries and really getting a deeper understanding of blocks that you have, common blocks that people have around setting boundaries. Okay, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if this resonates with you. All right, ready for this? Myth number one, boundaries are one and done. That as soon as you set a boundary and you put it out into the world, in the universe, everyone's going to respect it and it is all over. It is not how it works. Boundaries are actually fluid because boundaries really depend upon you, and you are a human being full of growth and potential who is going to shift and evolve in your own life. I have found the more I grow and the more I evolve, the more my boundaries actually shift and change. I am someone who used to really wish that everything was just completely solved and done. I never had to work on myself. I never had to figure out my boundaries again. As soon as I set them, I was in the clear. And the truth is, that is not how it works. We all are always growing and evolving. People around you are growing and evolving. Your boss, your siblings, your parents, your partner, everybody is changing. And when we can really remember that everybody is always changing, it's much easier to remember that means your boundaries are going to have to evolve and grow along with all of those shifts and changes. So if you can accept that and understand that, you are much, much more likely to have successful boundaries. Myth two, boundaries weaken relationships. If you are afraid of setting boundaries because you feel like it will actually now weaken your relationships with other people, that is not true. The truth is boundaries strengthen relationships. I have had many clients actually tell me this as soon as they set boundaries into place, that they actually found they had deeper relationships because they had more space for themselves. They had more capacity to actually really be present with the other person, that they really actually found themselves deepening and expanding into a different side of themselves. And then it actually also reflected that into the other relationship. And the truth is boundaries are love. Boundaries are a much more expansive experience of love for people. So when you are actually setting them effectively and clearly, you will find you are more loving to yourself and you are more loving to other people, and your relationships, in fact, get stronger. Myth three, people will think less of you once you set boundaries. Here's the truth. People respect somebody who sets boundaries. People are so amazed and inspired by people who have clear, strong boundaries. Truly. People say this about me because it's taken me a long time and I have clear boundaries, and they're like, wow, you really have good boundaries. People really want that for themselves. You don't see a lot of examples of strong boundaries out there, which is why you might think that people won't like it once you set them. In fact, once you start to set them, people really become amazed at, like, how did she do that? How did she figure that out? What is the secret sauce to setting a really good boundary? Because actually everyone deeply desires this. Everyone deeply desires to work less, have more space for hobbies and family and things that really make them feel good and energized and rejuvenated. People want that space. They don't actually want to be working at night or on the weekends. And so when you actually are learning to set them for yourself and you're working on them, people are going to be pretty amazed by it. Your boss, everybody, they're not going to think you're less productive or any of those other crappy kind of things we think. It's actually the opposite. They're like, oh, wow, they're taking care of themselves. They're going to be such a more productive and healthy employee when they're setting these boundaries. And I'm so glad they're doing it. So if you are not letting yourself set boundaries, it's time for you to cut through all those myths and really remember for yourself that boundaries are essential, they are healthy, and they are important. The next step to understanding boundaries for yourself is understanding your own boundary tendency. What is it? What are the ways that you tend to set boundaries? And then once you have a deeper understanding of the different types of boundaries that you might be struggling with, then you can say, okay, now I have a clear pathway for really getting myself to actually setting good boundaries. So check out my quiz, NicoleSong.com/quiz. And in that quiz, you will actually identify which of the 3 boundary tendencies you are. And these are tendencies I've identified over years of working with women on boundaries or who are struggling with boundaries and really seeing for themselves, like, how do they start to get clarity for themselves on what boundary tendencies they have, so then they can now transform their boundaries and shift them for themselves. All right, if this resonates, drop any takeaways in the comments, hit like, hit subscribe, and thank you all so much for being here.